Time now to make rounds and new questions regarding that remarkable story we told you about last week about a man thought to be in a coma for 23 years. Ram Human is now reportedly communicating via computer, recently telling his harrowing tale to a British reporter.
While his carer supports his hand and elbow, Rom guides the pen onto a keyboard. He understands English, but types his answers in Flemish.
How lonely, how frightening has it been for you these last 20-something years?
At some moments, it was terribly lonely, but I knew my family was believing in me.
A neurologist told us last week that it was possible for him to have had locked-in syndrome, where he was conscious but unable to communicate. But now some are questioning the story, and I'm joined by Dr. Michael DeGiorgia. He is director of the Neurocritical Care Division at University Hospital's Case Medical Center in Cleveland, and Dr. Arthur Kaplan, medical ethicist at the University of Pennsylvania. Art, you wrote on MSNBC.com that you have doubts about this story.
I do. When I first heard about it, I was a little nervous in that he seemed to be communicating very lucidly, very clearly, almost better than anybody who'd been in a locked-in state for 23 years should have been able to. But then I saw something on the tape, Nancy. I haven't seen this gentleman, and in fact, I hope he's lucid and doing well, but he's having his hand guided around the keyboard by an aide, and that's called facilitated communication, and that is a technique that has raised all kinds of trouble. It's been used in autistic children, it's been used in other brain damaged children, and time and again it's been shown that the therapist is much more involved in communicating the messages than the patient. That technique really needs to be confirmed before we go much further in saying what this gentleman is capable of.
And Michael, even as far as 1994, this idea of facilitated communication was really frowned upon, and I know your world of the neuropsychiatric world is really quite complicated, but do you have some doubts about this story too, in that video when you look at it?
Well, I mean, I think it's hard to know. I mean, whenever you're looking at a video of a patient without being in the room and examining that patient yourself, it's really hard to know whether somebody's moving his arm in a Ouija board kind of fashion. But having said that, I mean, I don't think that that necessarily discounts that a patient can be locked in for many years and have that go unrecognized. And patients who are truly locked in are cognitively normal. And I have several patients who are locked in who email me and have websites and written books. I mean, they're cognitively normal. So the fact that he's lucid doesn't really bother me at all.
And you know what? And I respect very much what you just said about not making a diagnosis without examining someone. We certainly watched some members of Congress make fools of themselves diagnosing people during the Terry Schiavo case. But certainly this man doesn't look like he can even move his arm well enough to point accurately. And the lucidity of these statements is what's stunning.
Well, that's true, and I think it needs to be investigated further. But again, coming back to the point, it doesn't discount that patients can recover with time, and with advances in neurocritical care, I think that that does play an important role in these sort of awakenings that you hear every now and then of patients who wake up after several years.
So, Art, what should we take home from this? You know, being just sort of healthy skeptics, and that we're rooting for this guy, and we hope it's okay, but jury's still out.
You know, I was one of the first people to jump all over those members of Congress about diagnosing.
It was one of the lowest points in modern medicine to see doctors in Congress hold up X-rays.
This situation is one in which I think we have to be cautious. There are a lot of people out there thinking, can my loved one wake up? Can my loved one be given up on prematurely? Do I have to wait 20, 30 years before we can say they're not going to recover? There are different ways in which people wind up unable to communicate. Locked-in syndrome is one of them, but we have to both distinguish the different kinds of neurological conditions that lead people to impairment in communication. And then we want some confirmation here. Healthy skepticism, hope, but healthy skepticism, I think.
Well, if something happens to me, I want you guys at my bedside. You too. I want you guys at my bedside. Michael, Art, thank you. Two class acts. I appreciate it very much.